Wondering what to say in a podcast intro? In this video, I'm going to share the 4 things your podcast introduction should definitely have, as well as the biggest questions you need to answer, like, is it better to say my podcast intro live in every episode or have it pre-recorded? Should the podcast intro be in my voice, or would it sound more professional to have somebody else voice it? How long is too long when it comes to a podcast intro? I will tell you, I think most podcasts spend way too long on it, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. And if I have a video podcast, how does that affect my podcast introduction? Plus, as we go, I'm going to share 3 specific examples because I know a lot of people learn well from examples, including myself. By the way, this is day 8 of our series about how to build a podcast. I'm building a brand new podcast for my business called the Done by Lunch Entrepreneur, and I'm taking 1 step a day and showing you how to take the same step in a new video. You can find a playlist of all the videos here on my YouTube channel. First, let's understand the purpose of the podcast intro. It's not just to have cool music or make it sound cool or anything like that. First thing it does is for your returning listeners, it gives them a sense of familiarity, like, yeah, this is that show that I like. It's almost like a catchy jingle in some ways. So it does serve a purpose for your existing listeners. But more importantly, it helps new listeners quickly assess and understand the vibe of the show, the premise. What is this show about? And decide how closely they're going to listen and whether it's right for them or not. In fact, when we work with clients in our Modcast Accelerator program, Modcast because we teach building your show out of modules instead of the way that podcasting has always been done, we actually call this the vibe check module because it's that chance for somebody new to go check the vibe, like, let me see what this place is all about. I want to know if this is my kind of place or not. There is one more thing a podcast intro does for your show, and we'll talk about that when we talk about what to say here in just a second. Should my podcast intro be read live every episode, or should it be pre-recorded? Pre-recorded is nice because then you can add music for emotion or effects, or if you're doing video, you can add video clips, and it becomes this one-time thing that you create or have created for your show, and then you can use it in every show going forward. So that's what I'm doing for my new podcast. But on another podcast I host, the Social Media Marketing Talk Show, we do it live every week. It's super quick, and it looks like this. My name is Jerry Potter. Welcome to the Social Media Marketing Talk Show, a production from Social Media Examiner, where we break down all the latest social media news and what it means for marketers like you. The best thing about doing it live, though, is you can just start getting your episodes out there. Don't wait for a pre-recorded one if you are ready to go. Just start putting out episodes, and then you can always add a produced one later on in episode 5 or 10 or 15. Should I voice my own podcast intro, or does it sound more professional to have someone else do it? This is going to be personal preference, but there are 2 big advantages to having someone else do it. Actually, I would say there's one big advantage and one okay advantage, okay? The okay advantage is it adds more dimension to the show. You can get somebody who doesn't sound like you, so if you're a male like me,
you might have a female.
If you have an accent that it sounds like one part of the world, but you work with people in other parts of the world,
then you might have someone with a different accent
read the intro. But the biggest advantage to having somebody else do it, I guess you could say it sounds more professional, but someone else reading your podcast intro can brag about you in a way that you can't. They can say great things about you that if you said them yourself, you would sound like an egomaniac. So I think that's the biggest advantage of having somebody else do it. Used to be, and I have done this in the past, you usually have to pay somebody, a professional, maybe hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on who it was, to get somebody to voice it for you. But now with AI tools like I Love 11 Labs, we'll link to this in the description, you can just have somebody else voice your intro, and super simple, super cheap, or even free. How long is too long when it comes to podcast intros? I like to shoot with our clients for 15 to 20 seconds max. The reason for this is that your returning listeners and viewers are hearing it over and over and over again. So no matter how good it is, if it's 45 to 60 seconds, you don't want them to roll their eyes like, I love this podcast, but here's this long intro every single time. The one for my new show, which I just finished this morning, is only 9 seconds, and I'll play it for you here in just a second. And if I'm doing a video podcast, is the podcast intro any different? Yeah, this gives you the chance to add production elements like we talked about before. So I like to build it out of B-roll and footage of me when I have it available. This gives you an opportunity to make something really cool and fast moving that can go at or near the beginning of every episode that you put on YouTube, so it adds some more production value to get people engaged, especially if the rest of your podcast is just going to be you talking to the camera. So big advantage there. Here's the podcast intro from my show, The 6 Ways, which comes in at about 19 seconds.
There's no wrong way to be an entrepreneur, and that's the dirty little secret the business gurus don't want you to know. They want you to do things their way, but their way may not be your way. The key to success is finding the strategies that work best for you. Welcome to The 6 Ways with Jerry Potter.
Now let's talk about what you should say in your podcast intro. And by the way, if you are enjoying this video or this series, we've taken all the notes for you. So if you are building your podcast right now or planning to in the next 6 to 12 months, download our Profitable Podcasters Playbook to make sure you don't miss anything. And you can get the link for this in the description of this video right now or as soon as you're done watching. So what should you say in your podcast intro? With our clients in our Modcast Accelerator program, we have a whole framework around this, but these are the 4 things you want to make sure are in your podcast. First, the name of the show, obviously. Second, the name of the host or hosts, of course. Third, what's the premise of your show? What is it that sets your show apart? If you are doing a fitness show, you've got to tell them, why is your show different than the thousands of podcasts out there that are about fitness? If your show is about marketing, you got to tell them, why is your show different than the thousands of podcasts out there that are about marketing? That is your premise or unique angle. And I'll share the 4th one here in a second, but here is the 9-second podcast intro for my new show, The Done by Lunch Entrepreneur. See if I got those 3 things in there.
Welcome to Done by Lunch Entrepreneurs with Jerry Potter, where every episode is designed to help you run and grow your business in half the time so you can move on to other things that give you purpose.
All right, I think we got them. And the 4th one, and this one is semi-optional, anything that you want to have in every episode of your podcast, but that you don't want to worry about having in every episode of your podcast. For example, with clients, the one that comes up a lot is establishing your authority. So if you are an expert or you've put in a lot of work to learn the things you're sharing or whatever it might be, you may not want to have to remember to say that every time you do an episode. So you can script that into your vibe check module, as we call it, or your podcast intro to make sure that that's in every single episode. Now, once you've done that, the next step is actually going to be relatively easy. You're going to need a podcast description, which is the thing that helps people find your podcast in search and decide to listen or subscribe or follow. But as I hinted, the good news is you can take what you did in this video and combine it with the next video on the screen right now, and it'll be super easy for you to crank this out.